I dug up their precious fiber optic cable with my bare hands and billed them $14,000 for the pleasure. Yeah, you heard that right. But before you start picturing me as some unhinged lunatic in a flannel shirt, let me back up and tell you how I, Jake Miller, a perfectly reasonable guy from Maple Grove, ended up in a war with the neighborhood's most feared HOA tyrant, Karen Thompson. Oh, and trust me, this story's got more twists than a pretzel factory, so stick around, and maybe drop a comment below telling me the wildest thing your HOA's ever pulled. I'd love to know I'm not alone in this madness. It all started last summer, on a sticky July morning when the cicadas were screaming louder than my coffee maker. I just poured my second cup, black, no nonsense, when I glanced out my kitchen window and sighed. A crew of sweaty guys in neon vests tearing up my front yard like it was a free-for-all at a buffet. Shovels clanging, dirt flying, and some fancy-looking cable spooling out behind them. My first thought? Great, the city's finally fixing that busted water line. My second thought, after I stepped outside and saw the HOA logo on their truck? Oh, hell no. I'm not part of the HOA. Never have been. My little slice of heaven, a cozy ranch house on a half-acre lot, sits just outside their jurisdiction, thanks to a zoning quirk from the 70s. It's my pride and joy, paid off with 15 years of blood, sweat, and engineering gigs. So when I marched over to the crew's supervisor, a guy named Tony with a clipboard and a sunburn, and asked what they were doing burying fiber optic cable across my property, his answer nearly made me drop my mug. HOA's orders, he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. High-speed internet upgrade for the neighborhood. Karen said it's all cleared. Karen, I repeated, feeling my eye twitch. Karen Thompson? The lady who once fined someone $200 for planting daisies instead of marigolds. Tony nodded, already turning back to his crew. That's the one. Look, man, I just dig where they tell me. I stood there, coffee going cold, watching them slice through my grass like it was wrapping paper on Christmas morning. That's when I felt it, a slow, simmering burn in my chest. Not anger, not yet. More like resolve. See, I'm not some hothead who yells at strangers. I'm an engineer. I solve problems. And this? This was a problem begging for a solution. So I did what any rational person would do. I went inside, fired up my laptop, and pulled up every property record, zoning map, and legal statute I could find. 3 hours later, I had it, proof that my land wasn't under HOA control. Not a single blade of grass. And that cable? It was trespassing worse than a raccoon in a trash can. I printed out the docs, grabbed my phone, and called the HOA office. Guess who picked up? Karen Thompson, president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association, she chirped, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness you'd expect from a telemarketer. How can I assist you today? Karen, I said, keeping my tone even, your crew's digging up my yard without permission. My property's not in your HOA. Care to explain? There was a pause, long enough for me to hear her mentally recalibrating. Then she laughed. Oh, Jake, don't be silly. This is for the greater good. Everyone wants faster internet. You'll thank us later. Thank them? I hung up, grabbed my shovel, and headed outside. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what digging really looked like. So there I was, standing in my front yard, shovel grip tight, staring down that half-buried fiber optic cable like it was a dragon I'd been hired to slay. The crew had clocked out for the day. Apparently even HOA lackeys need a sandwich break, and left behind a jagged trench that turned my once pristine lawn into something resembling a moonscape after a meteor shower. My grass was toast. My patience had evaporated faster than a puddle in July, but my brain? Oh, it was buzzing like a live wire, and I hadn't felt this kind of adrenaline since I'd pulled an all-nighter fixing a bridge design with nothing but a calculator, a pot of coffee, and a grudge against gravity. I didn't waste a second. I jammed that shovel into the dirt and started digging, not some half-hearted poke around, but a full-on excavation. I went at it like an archaeologist unearthing a lost civilization, ripping up that cable foot by glorious foot. The sun was a relentless beast, scorching my neck and turning my T-shirt into a soggy rag. Sweat stung my eyes, my hands blistered like I'd been arm wrestling a cactus, but every clod of earth I flung aside felt like a middle finger to Karen Thompson and her HOA empire. By the time I'd exposed 50 feet of their precious line, I was grinning ear to ear, chest heaving, looking like a madman who'd just found buried treasure. And in a way, I had treasure in the form of sweet, petty justice. That's when Sarah Jenkins, my next-door neighbor, poked her head over the cedar fence separating our yards. Sarah's the kind of woman who'd bake you a batch of chocolate chip cookies just for mowing your lawn on time. Chaos isn't her scene. But me? I was knee-deep in it, and loving every second. Jake, what in the sweet name of apple pie are you doing out here? She asked, her hazel eyes wide as she took in the carnage. I leaned on my shovel, catching my breath, and flashed her a grin. Reclaiming my property, Sarah. The HOA thought they could sneak a cable through my yard without so much as a pretty please. Spoiler alert, they can't. She blinked, processing that, then let out a little laugh, a nervous one, like she wasn't sure whether to cheer me on or call for backup. Karen's gonna lose her mind when she hears about this. Good, I said, driving the shovel back into the dirt with a satisfying thunk. Let her. I've got a front row seat and popcorn on standby. Sarah shook her head and disappeared back behind the fence, probably to text the neighborhood group chat about the lunatic next door. I didn't care. I kept digging until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. By then, I'd unearthed a good 70 feet of cable, sleek, black, and oh so expensive looking. I coiled it up on my porch like a trophy, wiped the grime off my hands, and headed inside. Sleep? Not tonight. My dining room was about to become a war room. I shoved aside the table's usual clutter, bills, a half-dead fern, a stack of coasters, and spread out my arsenal. Property deeds, zoning maps, a laptop glowing with every legal statute I could dig up. I titled my spreadsheet Operation Karen Touch This and got to work. Step 1. Dig up the cable. Check. Step 2. Hit them where it hurts, their wallet. See, I'd spent 15 years as an engineer dealing with contractors, so I knew the numbers game better than most. That fiber optic cable? It wasn't some bargain bin extension cord. We're talking $200 a foot, minimum, plus labor, equipment, and permits they didn't have for my land. I crunched the figures, 70 feet of cable, installation costs, and a little something I called an inconvenience fee for the privilege of trashing my yard. Grand total? $14,000. I typed up an invoice, crisp and professional, attached photos of the trench with timestamps, and fired it off to Karen's HOA email with a subject line that read, Payment due, 30 days. Then I leaned back in my chair, cracked my knuckles, and waited for the fireworks. They didn't take long. The next morning, my phone started buzzing like a beehive on a sugar high. Karen's name flashed across the screen, 5 missed calls in 10 minutes. I let it go to voicemail, partly because I was savoring my coffee, black, no frills, the way God intended, partly because I knew every unanswered ring was a thorn in her side. When I finally listened, her voice was a masterpiece of fake sweetness laced with venom. Jake, this is ridiculous. You can't just dig up our infrastructure and send us a bill. We'll see what the board has to say about this. I suggest you reconsider before things get messy. Oh, Karen, you beautiful, delusional dictator. She thought the board would rally behind her? I'd met half those people at the 4th of July picnic, Tom Grayson, who'd grumbled about her fining him for a non-regulation mailbox, and Lisa Carter, who'd called her a control freak with a clipboard. They weren't her fan club, but I wasn't banking on gossip or goodwill. I had cold, hard facts, deeds, maps, and a shovel that said I meant business. By noon, I was back outside, this time with a lawn chair, a glass of lemonade, and a front-row view of the chaos. The crew rolled up in their beat-up truck, HOA logo glaring from the side. Tony, the supervisor, spotted me lounging there and let out a groan that could have woken a coma patient. You again? What now, man? I pointed at the coiled cable on my porch, gleaming in the sunlight like a snake I'd wrestled into submission. That's my property you're trespassing on, Tony. I'd suggest you call your boss before you dig another inch. He muttered something I won't repeat. Let's just say it wasn't a compliment, and yanked out his phone. I sipped my lemonade, letting the ice clink against the glass, while Karen's voice screeched through the speaker loud enough for me to catch every syllable. He did what? Tell him to put it back right now. Or we'll sue him into next year. Tony hung up, looking like he'd rather be shoveling manure than dealing with this. She says put it back. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him, and grinned wide enough to show teeth. Tell her to come say that to my face. And that, my friends, was when Karen's war marched straight to my doorstep. I was still sipping my lemonade, lounging in my lawn chair like a king on a throne of spite, when Karen's silver SUV screeched into my driveway. The tires kicked up gravel like a toddler throwing a tantrum, and out she stormed, 5'4" of fury in a pastel blazer and pearls, her blonde bob so stiff it could have doubled as a helmet. Tony and his crew shrank back like they'd just spotted a tornado, but me? I waved, nice and slow, letting the ice in my glass clink for effect. This was about to get good. "Jake Miller," she barked, marching across my torn-up yard with a clipboard clutched like a shield. "What do you think you're doing? This is vandalism, pure and simple. Put that cable back this instant." I stood up, stretching like I had all the time in the world, and set my lemonade on the porch railing. "Morning, Karen. Nice to see you too. I'd offer you a drink, but I'm fresh out of Kool-Aid for your little cult." Her face went from pink to fire engine red in about 2 seconds flat. "This isn't a joke. That cable is HOA property, and you've got no right." "Wrong," I cut in, pulling a folded stack of papers from my back pocket, my property deed, zoning map, and a highlighted section of state law on trespassing. I'd laminated them that morning, just for kicks. "This is my land, not yours. No HOA jurisdiction, no permission granted. You're the one with no right here." She snatched the papers, scanning them like she could will the words to change. I watched her lips purse tighter with every line, and I swear I heard her pearls rattling. This is nonsense," she sputtered, shoving them back at me. "We're improving the neighborhood. Everyone wants faster internet." "Funny," I said, crossing my arms. "I don't recall signing up for your charity project, or agreeing to let you rip up my yard like it's a sandbox." Karen jabbed a manicured finger at me. "You're being selfish, Jake. The board approved this, unanimously. You can't just undo progress because you're too stubborn to see the big picture." I laughed, couldn't help it. "The big picture? Karen, the only picture here is you thinking you can steamroll whoever you want. Newsflash, my property, my rules. And right now, your cable's a guest that's overstayed its welcome." She glared at me, then spun on her heel and barked at Tony. "Fix it. Put it back, now." Tony shuffled his feet, looking like a kid caught between warring parents. Boss, he's got the deed and all. Maybe we should." "Don't you start with me," she snapped, then turned back to me, eyes blazing. "You'll regret this, Jake. I'll have lawyers on you so fast your head'll spin." "Looking forward to it," I said, picking up my lemonade again. "Tell them to bring cash for that $14,000 invoice while they're at it." That did it. She stormed back to her SUV, slamming the door so hard I thought the windows might crack, and peeled out of my driveway like she was auditioning for a car chase movie. I watched her go, then glanced at Tony. "You sticking around, or?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Man, I don't get paid enough for this." "We're out." The crew piled into their truck and rumbled off, leaving me alone with my coiled cable in a yard that looked like a war zone. Victory, round 1. But I wasn't done. See, Karen's little tantrum had lit a fire under me, part glee, part righteous fury. I grabbed my phone and called the county inspector's office. "Hey, yeah, I've got an unpermitted construction project on my property," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Mind sending someone out to take a look?" The guy on the line promised a visit by Friday, and I hung up feeling like I'd just drawn a royal flush. That night, I sat on my porch, the crickets chirping a victory anthem, and scrolled through my inbox. Karen's next move had already landed, a furious email CC to the entire HOA board, accusing me of sabotaging community progress and harassing her crew. She demanded an emergency meeting to address the Miller situation. Perfect. Let her dig her own grave. I leaned back, staring at the stars, and let the satisfaction wash over me. This wasn't just about a cable anymore. It was personal. Karen had picked the wrong guy to mess with, and I was just getting started. The next few days felt like the calm before a storm, except my yard was still a mess, and I was the one brewing the thunder. Karen's email to the HOA board had set the neighborhood buzzing. My phone pinged with texts from folks like Sarah and Tom Grayson, half amused, half worried I'd poked a bear with a stick. I didn't care. I'd swapped my shovel for a new weapon, patience. And when the county inspector's white pickup rolled up that Friday morning, I knew it was time to play my next card. The inspector, a guy named Mike with a graying mustache and a no-nonsense clipboard, stepped out and whistled at the side of my trench. "Looks like someone's been busy," he said, jotting notes. "What's the story here?" I walked him through it, calm, factual, like I was briefing a client on a job site. Showed him the coiled cable, the property lines, the zoning docs. "HOA ran this through my land without permits or permission," I said. "Thought you might want to check it out." Mike squinted at the cable, then at my papers, and nodded slow, like he'd seen this kind of nonsense before. "If this ain't your HOA's turf, they've got no business digging here. I'll need to see their permits if they've got any." "They don't," I said, fighting a grin. I checked. He spent an hour measuring, snapping photos, and muttering about code violations and unauthorized utilities. By the time he left, he'd promised a report by Monday and a notice to the HOA to explain themselves. I thanked him, handed him a bottle of water for the road, and watched him drive off, feeling like I'd just landed a solid punch in a boxing match I hadn't even signed up for. That afternoon, I decided to celebrate. Fired up the grill, threw on some burgers, and invited Sarah over. She showed up with a tray of brownies and a smirk. "Heard Karen's been telling everyone you're a menace," she said, settling into a patio chair. "Says you're ruining her legacy." "Her legacy?" I flipped a burger, laughing. "What is she, a president or a dictator? Last I checked, her legacy is fining people for wrong-colored shutters." Sarah snorted. "She's called an emergency meeting tomorrow night. Tom says she's got a PowerPoint ready, something about preserving community values." I plated the burgers and slid one her way. "Let her talk. She's just making my case for me." And talk she did. The next evening, I didn't bother crashing the HOA meeting. Why give Karen the satisfaction? Instead, I got the play-by-play from Tom, who texted me updates like a sports commentator. "She's up there now," he wrote. Slide 1. The Miller threat. "You're famous, man." I grinned, sipping a beer on my couch. What's slide 2? Cost of defiance. "She's saying your $14,000 bill is extortion." Crowd split, half think she's nuts, half are eating it up. I typed back, "Let me know when she cries." Tom replied with a laughing emoji, and I leaned back, picturing Karen in her blazer, waving her pointer like a general losing a war. She could rant all she wanted. Facts don't bend to PowerPoints. Sunday morning brought a surprise. A letter slid under my door, HOA letterhead and all. "Cease and desist," it read, demanding I restore the cable infrastructure or face legal action. Signed by Karen, naturally, with her title in bold, President, Maple Grove HOA. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Legal action? With what? Her coupon for a free consultation. I framed that letter, hung it right above my desk next to a photo of the trench. Then I called Mike at the county office. "Got a cease and desist from the HOA, I said. "Anything on that report yet?" "Funny you mention it," he said. "Just filed it. No permits on record for that cable on your property. They're in violation big time. Notice goes out tomorrow." I thanked him and hung up, my pulse racing. Karen's little empire was crumbling, and I hadn't even broken a sweat this time. The meeting might have rallied her loyalists, but the county didn't care about her slides or her bluster. Monday was coming, and with it, a reckoning she couldn't dodge. I spent the rest of the day tinkering in my garage, the satisfaction simmering like a slow-cooked stew. This wasn't just about a cable anymore. It was about standing up to a bully with a rulebook. And I was winning. Monday morning hit like a freight train of karma. I was halfway through my coffee when the mail truck rumbled by, and there it was in my mailbox, a crisp envelope from the county, addressed to me with a carbon copy to the HOA. I tore it open, and there, in glorious black and white, was Mike's report. Unauthorized utility installation detected. No permits filed. Property owner within rights to remove trespassing infrastructure. HOA to cease operations on said parcel immediately. I read it twice, then pinned it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a tiny hammer. A trophy for the ages. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. By noon, my phone lit up with a text from Sarah. "Karen's at the HOA office. Saw her through the window. She's pacing like a caged tiger." I chuckled, picturing her in that blazer, pearls bouncing as she waved the county notice like it was a personal insult. She'd built her kingdom on rules, and now the real ones were biting back. That afternoon, I decided to take a victory lap, figuratively, of course. I drove to the hardware store, picked up some sod to patch my yard, and swung by the diner for a milkshake. The cashier, a kid named Ethan who'd grown up down the street, leaned over the counter. "Heard you're giving Karen hell," he said, grinning. "My mom says she's been whining about you nonstop." "Whining's her superpower," I said, slurping my vanilla shake. "She'll tire herself out eventually." Back home, I was unloading the sod when Karen's SUV screeched up again, this time with a passenger. Out stepped a guy in a cheap suit, clutching a briefcase like it was his lifeline. Lawyer, no doubt. She brought reinforcements. I set down the sod roll, wiped my hands on my jeans, and strolled over, casual as you please. "Jake," Karen snapped, her voice tight enough to crack glass. "This is Mr. Hargrove, our attorney. We're filing an injunction to stop your little stunt." Hargrove adjusted his tie, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Miller, we believe you've overstepped." "Save it," I said, pulling the county notice from my pocket. "Read this. No permits, no rights. You're the ones overstepping literally onto my land. He skimmed it, his face falling faster than a bad stock. Karen snatched it from him, her eyes darting over the text. This is absurd, she shrieked. We'll appeal. We'll bury you in paperwork. Good luck with that, I said, turning back to my sod. County's already got your number. Oh, and that $14,000? Still due. Clock's ticking. Hargrove muttered something to her, probably we're screwed, and she hissed back, loud enough for me to catch, unacceptable, and reputation. They retreated to her SUV, bickering like a bad sitcom, and peeled out. I shook my head and got back to work, the sod cool under my hands. One patch at a time, I was fixing what they'd broken and loving every second. That night, Tom swung by with a six-pack and the latest gossip. HOA meeting got ugly, he said, cracking a beer. Karen tried spinning the county notice as harassment from you. Half the board's fed up. Lisa's pushing to audit her decisions. I clinked my bottle against his. She's sinking her own ship. I'm just handing her the rope. He laughed. Rope? Man, you've given her a whole noose. Word is, she's losing it. Snapped at Mrs. Delaney over a typo in the minutes. I leaned back, the beer cold against my lips. Karen's empire was cracking, and I hadn't even played my full hand yet. See, I've been digging figuratively this time. A buddy from my engineering days worked at the utility company that supplied the cable. I'd called him Saturday, asked a few questions. Turns out, the HOA's internet upgrade wasn't fully funded. Karen had cut corners, skipped permits, and bet on no one noticing. Big mistake. Tuesday morning, I emailed the HOA board, not Karen, the whole crew, attaching the county notice, my invoice, and a polite note. Given the violations, I assume you'll want to address this internally. Happy to discuss repayment. Short, sweet, and sharp as a tack. Then I sat back and waited for the dominoes to fall. By dusk, Sarah texted again. Board's meeting without Karen tonight. Emergency session. You're a legend, Jake. I grinned, stepping onto my porch. The air smelled like fresh sod and triumph. One more push, and this war would be mine. The sun rose on Wednesday like it knew something big was coming. I was out front, smoothing the last of the sod into place, when Tom's truck rolled up. He hopped out, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Jake, you've got to hear this, he said, barely containing himself. Karen's out. Done. Resigned last night. I straightened up, brushing dirt off my hands. No kidding? What happened? He leaned against his truck, savoring the story. Board met without her. Lisa took charge. They dug into the cable mess, found out she'd botched the funding, skipped permits, and lied about approvals. Your email was the final straw, showed she dragged the HOA into a legal dumpster fire. I laughed, loud and free, the sound echoing off my house. So she's gone? Just like that? Yep. Quit before they could vote her out. Packed up her office and peeled out at midnight. Sarah saw the whole thing. He shook his head. You took down the HOA queen, man. Legendary. I grabbed us a couple of sodas from the fridge, and we sat on my porch, toasting to the end of an era. The yard looked good, green, even, peaceful, like nothing had ever happened. But inside, I was buzzing. This wasn't just about fixing my lawn anymore. It was about standing up to a tyrant who'd ruled Maple Grove like her personal fiefdom, finding folks for flower pots and mailboxes, all while breaking her own rules. And I'd won. By noon, the news was everywhere. Sarah dropped by with brownies, her victory batch, she called them, and a printout of the HOA's latest newsletter. Special announcement, it read. Karen Thompson has stepped down as president, effective immediately. The board apologizes for recent oversights and is reviewing all projects. No mention of me, but I didn't need the credit. The coiled cable still sitting on my porch was proof enough. That afternoon, Lisa Carter, the new interim president, called. Jake, she said, her voice warm but cautious, we owe you one. The cable thing, it's a mess, but we're pulling it back. No more digging on your land. Appreciate it, I said. What about my $14,000? She sighed. We're strapped after Karen's upgrades, but we'll work something out. Fair, I agreed. I didn't need the cash as much as I'd needed the win. We hung up, and I added her note to my growing collection, framed right next to Karen's cease and desist. The next day, I got a check in the mail, $5,000, with a memo, partial settlement, HOA. Not the full amount, but a start. I cashed it, bought a new grill, and threw a barbecue that weekend. Half the neighborhood showed up, Tom, Sarah, even Ethan from the diner. We ate burgers, swapped Karen's stories, and laughed until the stars came out. She'd find Tom for a flagpole once, hassled Sarah over a birdhouse. Everyone had a tale. Mine was just the loudest. Weeks later, the crew came back. Not Tony's guys, a new outfit. They pulled the cable off my property, patched the last of the trench, and left without a word. I watched from my window, sipping coffee, feeling like a general surveying a battlefield after the smoke cleared. The HOA was quieter now. Lisa's crew kept their heads down. No more crazy projects. Peace at last. Looking back, it's wild how it all started. One cable, one shovel, one stubborn guy who wouldn't bend. I didn't set out to topple Karen, but I'm glad I did. She'd pushed too far, and I'd pushed back harder. Now my yard's mine again, and Maple Grove breathes a little easier without her clipboard tyranny. Write in the comments, did I do the right thing, or should I have done something else? Share this video with your friends to keep them from making absurd canon.